Hello everyone, I'm Ariel with Urbanist. This is a show where I explore cities all around the world and show you the wonders and history of these places. Today we're walking in one of New York City's most historic neighborhoods, the South Street Seaport. Going back here 200 years ago, you would see these waterways bustling with traffic from boats, bringing in cargo from all around the world, taking out cargo to service the rest of the United States and elsewhere, and also ferries going back and forth from Manhattan, where we are right now. You can see the Manhattan view and the South Street Seaport all around us, and piers going back and forth to Brooklyn, sometimes just direct, just across the water. Now today we're going to walk around the South Street Seaport, and this is a 360 video, so take your time to look around in any direction you would like. And let's explore a little bit about the history of this place. Now, you see a few boats passing by, but they are a lot less than they used to be. Before, you sometimes would see complete clutter on the East River. It's because that much traffic of boats was needed in order to sustain the city. The city was dependent on its waterways. Manhattan, as we can see over here, is an island and it is cut off from the mainland. Water was necessary, and getting here by boat, by ferry, by cargo ship, by barge, by tugboat was necessary. Now, as we walk around the pier, we see two historic boats. This is the Ambrose. And the Ambrose has been here for decades. This is the iconic boat you visit in the South Street Seaport. Now, the boat that came here recently is the Tree. And this is one of the last remaining iron ships in the world. It was built in 1885 and it is a cargo ship. It is huge, it is beautiful, and extremely well kept. You can take a tour inside and actually go into the very base of the ship and see the huge cargo area. And it's really monumental to see in person. I took a video of it on Facebook Live. If you want to see that video, go to the Urbanist Facebook page and click the videos tab. But you can take a tour yourself here on the Tree. Now, the Tree has been everywhere, from where it was built in Liverpool all the way to Hong Kong, to Buenos Aires, to Santiago, Chile, to South Africa, Cape Town, etc. All around the world. This was a cargo ship, and like many cargo ships of the time, they serviced from the farthest reaches of the planet. Here's an old kiosk for buying tickets to probably the ferry and many other services offered on the waterways. Down here we have a venue that is now dedicated to music and performances, and a lot of them are on the rooftop, which is awesome, especially during the summertime. So here we get a really breathtaking view of the city, both modern and old together. We have the modern skyscrapers of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even skyscrapers built only a few years ago, like this one being built right now, to the skyscrapers of the 10s and 20s and 30s, the ones that started the boom of New York City. Like we can see one down there. Now, only a few minutes walk away is the harbor to take the ferry, the New York City ferry system. Now, the New York City ferry system is now servicing 4 of the major boroughs: Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. Staten Island, you can take a separate ferry that is about a 10-minute walk away from here. But now let's walk into the South Street Seaport and actually see the beauty of this historic area of New York City. Right over there we see the Brooklyn Bridge in the distance. Now, the Brooklyn Bridge really changed this area because before there ever was a bridge, this was built in 1883 and was a massive engineering marvel. Before there ever was a bridge, New York City was entirely dependent on boats. Entirely. Right underneath the FDR Drive, also known as the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Drive, and it services Manhattan north-south, and I love that they painted it purple, to brighten it up. always used to be this grayish, dark greenish color, depends where you are in Manhattan, and now it's this beautiful light violet color. It's just gorgeous. Now in front of us we're seeing all the historic buildings of the South Street Seaport dating back as far as the late 1700s. Most of them are from the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now, why is there so many buildings by the harbor? Well, because along with the harbor, there's a lot of businesses around it. Harbor brings a lot of commerce. The Seaport is centered around commerce. So you have lawyer offices, you have accounting offices, you have print shops in order to print all these ledgers and contracts. And also you have bars in order to service the sailors who are coming here and need a good drink before they go back to sea. Now right here we have the Fulton Market. The Fulton Market has a collection of art galleries, which you can visit yourself. Let's take a closer look. Here's one called the Helmut Newton Gallery. They have photographs, they have light sculptures on the other side. Lots of high-end shops all along the seaport. And seeing these buildings really brings you back in time. We have the Belgian blocks from dating back all the way to the Dutch era, right beneath our feet right now. And these buildings all the way in the mid-1800s. Coming here is like coming back in time. It's a very different vibe from any other part of New York City, because here it's very singularly well kept historically. Right over there we have the South Street Seaport Museum. The South Street Seaport Museum is free and gives you all the history of this area. All right, let's walk down here. There's a lounge right in the center of the South Street Seaport. It's really cool. And there's also a rooftop bar over here in the Fulton Market. And let's go through here, shall we? Christmas lights lighting above. It's a familiar sight in most harbors and seaports. Now during the summertime and the springtime and early autumn, basically most year round, you can sit outdoors in many of these restaurants. And here we have a historic walkway, which we're going to go through. And this is on Front Street. Now every time you see a Front Street or a Water Street or a River Street or a Pearl Street, they all have names that associate with the waterfront, and they're on purpose because that marks where the waterfront used to be. Right where we're standing on Front Street used to be the actual waterfront, and no longer it is. It was all landfill after here. So here is a walkway built in the 1790s. It's called Cannon's Walk. And it's cool because touching these bricks, you're touching history right here. I always recommend people to touch the actual buildings. There's something special to be able to just feel the history. Now this is the best kept secret of New York City because a lot of people don't know about this walkway. I think it's a private space, but it's not. It's open to the public. So, above you see the storm windows. Now, why are there storm windows here in New York City? Well, a lot of people don't know, but New York City has hurricanes. There's hurricanes, there's blizzards. New York City does encounter very harsh weather, of course, because it's right in front of the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean is known for being very rough seas. And you have storm windows, especially when you're closer to the window, the more necessary they are. There are modern workshops and craftsman shops here. probably would have seen craftsman shops here in the late 1800s as well. There's a cool sculpture being made right there with a skeleton. That's awesome. Now, right over here is the bone printer shop. Now, the bone printer shop is now part of the South Strait Seaport Museum, also free to enter. You can enter from this side or you can enter from the other side. Now, this is an old school printer shop because this printer shop serviced all the needs in order to reprint and replicate any contracts, ledgers, accounting books, manifests, anything that was necessary for the continuation and the maintenance of all these import and export shipping routes and cargo ships coming into the seaport. And you can see the old printers here that also date back to the mid-1800s. And there's printers actually currently working inside here. You see a few people inside. They're grabbing the letters and actually printing by hand unique prints that you can actually buy in their store. So here is a beautiful illustration that depicts the opening of the Brooklyn Bridge in 1883. Now we're only like 3 or 4 blocks away from the Brooklyn Bridge. Now whenever I say blocks, it's a New Yorker way of saying the size of the street. It could be a street, it could be a road, it could be an avenue, but it's like a block because in New York City most of it is gridded. Now this is the Brooklyn Bridge. We're a few blocks away from the Manhattan Tower. And the celebration was huge. This was a monumental event for New York City, connected two great cities. Now in 1883, New York, the island of Manhattan, was its own city. Brooklyn was its own city. Brooklyn, by all means, was a city almost as large as New York. If you put Brooklyn, when Brooklyn was its own city, it was the 4th largest city in America. New York was the 1st largest city in America. And this great bridge connected both of them together. So much so, it became so connected throughout the subsequent 15 years that they united together in 1898 to make the city of Greater New York. So walk through Cannon's Walk. It's a great walk inside here, open to the public. Might be closed for private events, but generally it's open. Now you're starting to see really a lot of the modern skyscrapers of New York, of downtown New York City. So why is there a lighthouse right here on the middle of the city? I mean, the water is all the way around there where we started. The sun is setting. Why is there a lighthouse here? Well, it's because this is not an actual lighthouse. This is a memorial to the sinking of the Titanic and all the people who lost their lives. The Titanic was this massive ocean liner that sank off the coast of Halifax by an iceberg. And it was a very dramatic event, covered in newspapers, one of the most widely covered tragedies of the early 1900s. And they built this memorial in 1913 in their honor. And for about 30, 40 years, they would get that ball, and that ball would mechanically go down every anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. They stopped doing that tradition in 1967 when they moved this lighthouse from its original location to here in 1968. It's impressive to see this huge concrete faux lighthouse. Actually, let me show you one thing down here. So this street over here is Water Street. Remember what I said about Front Street? Well, yep, Water Street used to be the water. And they mark it right here. East River low water mark in 1626. This was the water. If I were standing here back in 1626, we would be sinking right now into the water. So Water Street all the way at the water right over here. It's probably the maximum that they put landfill. Now most of New York all around, a bunch of it is landfill. Battery Park City, a lot of the harbors in Brooklyn are landfill. So it's pretty common in most colonies of the Dutch, because this was originally New Amsterdam, and colonies of the British. Here's the bone printer's shop from the front. And they have a store right next door that you can buy your own custom prints made here by actual artisanal printers. People who make their craft to be a printer. It's kind of a dying craft. You don't see too many printers because obviously we already have mechanical printers that can print at a much faster rate, but there's something special about holding a piece of hand-printed work. So just imagine being here and literally walking on the water when you would come here. Over there we see, right in front of us, we see the Frank Gehry building. Frank Gehry's known for his curvy architecture, and it does look like waves, and they did that on purpose in order to really kind of connect with the proximity to the water of New York City. So as we pass by all these buildings, mid-1800s, a lot of them housed bars, law offices, accounting offices, print shops, some of them coffee houses. Coffee houses traditionally in seaports were used as meeting spots for doing your accounting, for checking the manifest, or for even trading stocks in the goods that you were selling. The original stock exchange of New York City started in the Tontine Coffee House, which was a few blocks away from here. And also, a lot of these buildings were originally for cargo and for manufacturing. Now, right here is a particularly particularly preserved building. It's a National Register of Historic Places from 1837. You can see a very strong building and beautifully kept. Of course, a bar. Bars are very important in seaports. Now, seaports had a lot of high-end goods being trafficked here. But with high-end goods, there's always lots of seediness with the black market, with crime, stealing certain goods, or editing the books. And also for sailors, who some of them were people of ill repute. And with equally seedy people hanging out in seaports, there was seedy bars. Now, living around the seaport was also not a pleasant place to live. Unlike now, you have these multi-million-dollar condos, it's a very desirable place to live. It wasn't the case back in the mid-1800s. So a lot of the worst neighborhoods of New York City, including especially a neighborhood right next door called the Third Ward, was one of the worst neighborhoods in all of New York City. All the poorest of the poor, the criminals, the outcasts of the city lived all around, and they hang out in these bars. And one of these bars we're approaching soon was one of the most notorious ones. We're going to get to why. I admire all the fire escapes as we were walking through. They're actually pretty gorgeous, and we're approaching the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, the Brooklyn Bridge was built in an area that tore down a good portion of the Third Ward neighborhood. They did that on purpose. So right over here, we have a bar. And this bar had a female bouncer. And her name was Gallus Mag. And Gallus Mag was 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall, but if I were in the middle of the 1800s, I would be considered tall myself. But for a woman, that was gigantic. Now, okay, why do they have a female bouncer? 6 feet tall, not so intimidating yet. Until you see her teeth that were filed into fangs. Each and every single one of them sharp as a knife. She also always carried a pistol right on her hip. Now, she rarely used that pistol to maintain order in this bar because she used another weapon. That weapon was her fangs. And she bit off men's ears whenever they would get out of order, whenever they would confront her. She had a very bad reputation for doing that. And sometimes it wasn't limited to ears, sometimes it was noses, sometimes it was fingers. Now, this was an age before the common person could afford to reattach any ears or reattach any noses or any fingers. So what would she do with those extra pieces of skin that she bit off from the men of ill repute who decided to confront Gallus Mag? Well, Gallus Mag had a fondness for her conquests. She took every single piece of ear, some noses and some fingers, and put them in jars and pickled them. And this was known as the bar with pickled ears. And it was displayed prominently right in the bar for everyone to see, to know not to mess with Gallus Mag. Of course, New York City was very different back then, and New York City has changed since then. So that no longer would be acceptable in New York City culture. Let's walk a little bit further down. The bar, you still see it inside. You can see it not so much with the 360 camera. But I doubt that the jar is still there. But if they are, watch out. Now, the Brooklyn Bridge really changed the Seaport because the Seaport went from hustle and bustle, constant 24/7, to suddenly being less useful because there was trains, there was foot traffic, there was horse and carriage that could be used on the bridge. And then especially with the advent of trucks in the 30s and 40s, the Seaport really was even less useful. So the Seaport was nearly abandoned by the 70s here in New York City. And it stayed there until the 80s when they built a mall and this area kind of picked up a little bit. But this area really picked up in the early 2000s when they started really renovating this entire area. It became a very popular tourist destination and also a very popular place for luxury rentals. So you have amazing shops, amazing houses and apartments, and also amazing ferries and rides to take around Manhattan here at the harbor. Beautiful. And let's take one more look at the sunset. Here we have the sunset by the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge over there, built in 1908, and views of downtown Brooklyn and the Brooklyn Heights, which was America's first suburb. Definitely one of the best places to catch the sunset. The sunset's down there, right behind the Statue of Liberty. which isn't a view from here, but if you walk a few blocks down, you'll be able to see it. And New York City has changed a lot since then. No longer are we so dependent on the waterways. The waterways are now for leisure or for commuting, as with the case with the ferry. Now we are dependent on the car and the subway, which runs right beneath our feet across the East River. Yeah, take it in because there's nothing like the Brooklyn Bridge. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I'm Ariel with Urbanist. And thank you for all the supporters who are donating to Urbanist to get access to these 360 videos a month before they're released to everyone else. And feel free to share these videos to show to your friends and family the beauty of New York City. I'm Ariel with Urbanist. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. Have a great day, everyone.